What's going on, my fellow Jedi and Padawans? Welcome back to another Jedi gaming video. Thank you guys so much for coming back to the channel, and if you guys are new, welcome. Today we are throwing it to the only Void Hunter build that you guys will need for that endgame content. We're creating orbs of power, going invisible for those reses consistently, as well as dealing with every type of champion in the game while providing that gnarly debuff from our tether. So this thing, ultimate support end game build for our Void Hunters. So let's get right into it. So starting off for me with the build here, we're going to be using Mobius Quiver with Shadow Shot so we can get that nice tracking on those volleys for the arrows. Plus we do increase damage and create orbs of power with this build, everything stuck inside of those. Now for our abilities, we're going with Marksman's Dodge, the triple jump, our Snare Bomb, and then for me, pretty much always for Void builds in PvE, going with the Vortex Grenade just seems to work the best for me. Sometimes you can go with here with the Void Wall if you would like, but personally I'm a big Vortex fan. Now for our aspects over here, first off we got Vanishing Step. Obviously we're dodging to make ourselves invisible. This we're using for that nice endgame activities to go invis, get those reses, get out of those sticky situations. Now on top of that, with this build we're going with Stylish Executioner, so defeating weakened, suppressed, or volatile targets also grants us invisibility and true sight. This is super nice because this also, after we become invisible with that Stylish Executioner, our next melee while invisible weakens targets, which kind of perpetually allows us to have that weaken, get those defeats, become invisible again. Plus with our weapon that we have on, you will see why this is also super important. So first up on our list of fragments, we have Echo of Instability. So those defeats with our grenades are going to grant us volatile rounds, which helps us proc Stylish Executioner more, go invisible more often. Plus it'll help with our weapon, which you will see in a second here. Second off, we have Echo of a Remnant, so that Vortex Grenade's going to have that increased duration, allowing us to get more defeats with it. Plus, in a second here, we do have weakening for those grenades. Now next off right here, we're going to have Echo of Starvation, so all of those orbs of powers that we're creating, as well as void breaches around the map, we're going to get Devour, so helping us stay alive in that endgame content by having our health come back on those defeats with that Devour. Now last but certainly not least, like I said, we have Echo of Undermining, where our void grenades weaken targets, once again allowing us to proc Stylish Executioner. Plus with that long duration, volatility, and weakening, this thing right here, super nice for doing damage on some of those stronger content, like those champions, even bosses throwing it at them, so we can do damage with our weapons or our super, whatever it may be. So moving on to our weapons right here, we're starting out stunning all of those champions. First off with the Riptide and Chill Clip, we're using that Slow from Stasis for Overload, and then the Freeze and Shatter for Unstoppables. Now this thing I chose over the Deliverance this time, just because it's a little easier for everybody to grab inside of the Crucible and focusing those engrams, but anything with that Chill Clip in this slot, very effective. Now on top of that, like I said earlier, we are using Collective Obligation for that Void Leech on the debuffs. So this right here, one, when we get volatile rounds, and with our artifact, you will see we have the anti-barrier with this pulse rifle, plus with all of that Stylish Executioner, with the weaken we're getting from our grenades, with the volatile rounds we're getting on our weapon itself, as well as that weaken from our smoke bomb when we are invisible, we are able to get that Void Leech procced very often, which is just shooting a void debuffed targets, allows it to store that inside of the weapon, and then you do the alternate switch mode, which allows us to actually shoot those volatile rounds, weakening whatever it may be at a target. So it allows us to basically always have one of those void debuffs up, whether it be using our grenade or using this weapon right here. So Stylish Executioner comes in handy very very often with this build, mostly because of this collective obligation and all of the void debuffs that we're going to have. Now, last but certainly not least, commemoration for those void debuffs as well, with those volatile rounds specifically, being able to get it on our grenade defeats, as well as picking up orbs of power, which you will see in our artifact mod right here. So when we move on to our artifact mod right here, first off, we're using that anti-barrier pulse for collective obligations, just to have that up all the time for our last champion. Now, next off on this list, we're going to have Volatile Flow, so picking up Orbs of Power grant us volatile rounds. That'll be for our commemoration as well as our collective obligation. This also does grant us anti-barrier for both of those void weapons, but we do already have it in Pulse, but this definitely comes in handy with all the orbs we are creating, that collective obligation being able to leech those void debuffs and proc Stylus Executioner basically consistently with this build. And last but certainly not least, we're using Bricks from Beyond, so defeating powerful combatants with a void weapon has a chance to generate heavy for us and our teammates, just where this thing comes in handy a little bit again for that support and end game content, not just for you but for your teammates as well. Now, like I said, this build is going to be around those void debuffs as well as getting orbs of power so we can get volatility and keep ourselves alive. Now, we're going to be using Void Siphon as well as Stasis Siphon, so all of our weapons on those rapid defeats will be able to create orbs of power, allowing us to proc the various things with this build, as well as that extra heavy ammo finder, so it increases the drop rate of heavy ammo so we can keep that commemoration procced and ready to go. Now, when we move on to our arms right here, we're going to have Firepower as well as double grenade kickstart. So Firepower, we're creating even more orbs of power with those grenades in Vortex, and with that long duration it has, plus weakening, getting defeats with grenades super easy. So orbs of power everywhere, plus that grenade kickstarter. When we throw our grenade and have that armor charge, we're going to get back about half of the grenade immediately. So again, allowing us to have that up consistently, weakening enemies, creating volatile rounds for us, creating orbs of power, everything Stylus Executioner for that invisibility. This build absolutely nuts for that endgame activity, like I said, and support with your hunter. Now, when we move on to our chest piece right here, nothing special, pretty much on the chest pieces this season, and with the mod changes, charged up seems to be the way to go, especially with something like grenade kickstart, because the more armor charges you have, the more energy you get back. So with this, we're able to stack that up pretty high, and like I said, get back about half of our grenade charge when we throw it with that full armor charge as well. Now, moving on to our boots right here for Orpheus rigs. Like I said, we're using that Mobius quiver, so we're getting an additional shot with these, creating those volatile explosions. With that extra shot, we're able to get more orbs of power, able to do a little bit more damage, and I just think it is the way to go for most situations. Even though Deadfall lasts a little bit longer, I do like that triple shot with Mobius quiver and these boots. Now, for our mods on this, we're going to be using stacks on stacks, so when we pick up those orbs of power, we're going to gain 2 armor charges, not just 1, allowing us to stack that armor charge up to full very, very easily, allowing us to proc that grenade kickstarter and get even more energy back. And then on top of it, when we pick up orbs of power, we're also going to have recuperation, so our health regens every time we pick up an orb of power. Plus, we have this better already, so it's just a double health regen when we pick up orbs of power. Just another facet of all of those orbs that we're creating. And last but certainly not least, for our armor mods, double bomber, so when we dodge, we get our grenade back a little bit faster, and we're using Reaper, so when we dodge on our next weapon defeat, just creates us another orb of power, allowing us to stack that armor charge and everything else in between. Like I said, with this build, we're able to get volatile rounds with the orbs of power, we're getting our health back with the orbs of power, we're getting our super back even faster, and with all of those void debuffs that we're going to have in weakening with our grenade, volatile rounds with all of our weapons, the collective obligation is going to have that void leech very, very often, if not always, with this build, depending on the content you're going into and that enemy density. But with that and all of those void debuffs, we're also getting Stylus Executioner to proc. So invisibility consistently, void debuffs consistently with this build. So it is a great endgame content for you going in by yourself, dealing with all those champions, and even going in with that fire team as a support. Big W for our Void Hunter right here, and definitely suggest trying this build out inside of that endgame content. So thank you guys so much again for these builds. Truly appreciate it. Y'all have been crazy with that support. If y'all enjoy, don't be afraid to hit that subscribe button. Come back for more of these bangers, as well as some nice weapon god roll guides for y'all. So thank you guys again for that support. I'll catch you in the next one. Peace.